Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany on the 30th of January 1933. In my opinion, the number one reason why this happened was not because he was the leader of the largest political party in the Reichstag. As with less than 1/3 of all votes cast, he was not in a position to form a government. The reason why Adolf Hitler was appointed was more to do with a corruption scandal involving members of the establishment elite in Weimar Germany called the Eastern Aid Program. I've done a separate video on that, and the link is provided below. Sometimes I look at how this happened and it is almost as though it was planned, because the steps leading to dictatorship appear to fall very neatly into place. The very first step was being appointed Chancellor, albeit with a minority of Nazis in the cabinet. Hitler needed a general election, but he needed an election that he could fiddle up front by denying rights to his opponents. After all, the Nazi Party had lost 2 million votes in the election of November 1932 when compared to the previous election. The Reichstag Fire Decree, which was released only 6 days before the election, is clear, but there was an initial step which came on the 4th of February 1933, and that is called the Decree of the Reich President for the Protection of the German People. This emergency decree was issued by Reich President Paul von Hindenburg on the basis of Article 48, Paragraph 2 of the Weimar Constitution, which largely suspended the basic constitutional rights of freedom of assembly and freedom of the press. I won't read the entire decree to you, but I will provide you with a link so that you can read it for yourself. The link is in the description. However, I will give you a summary. The decree stipulated that all meetings and processions had to be reported to the local police authority at least 48 hours in advance, and that these meetings could be banned. Furthermore, they could be banned if speakers called for disobedience to laws or insulted the state in any way. The police was empowered to break up any meeting. It needs to be remembered that the SA was given police powers, so therefore the Nazi Party itself could legally break up meetings of any opposition party, and of course they could interpret the words spoken in any meeting in any way that they saw fit. Printed materials could be seized if they had content likely to endanger public safety or order. This, of course, included newspapers and magazines, which could be banned, and the ban could include all publications from the same publisher. So for a big company, this was a major risk, probably not worth taking. And imagine if you were the editor of a small paper in a small town, but part of a large media empire. Are you going to risk the wrath of your boss in having your boss's papers banned just because you reported on a meeting of a party that was opposed to the Nazis? Of course, an appeal could be made. Theoretically, this was still the Weimar Republic, a constitutional democracy, but the appeal had to be made to the Reich Minister of the Interior, and that was Wilhelm Frick, and he was a Nazi. The state had also the right to prohibit or confiscate collections of money. So once more, if you're in a party which doesn't like the Nazis, you had a whip round, well, the state could actually confiscate that. And as far as you know, that money could end up in Nazi coffers. So what did they do? They didn't collect money. Punishment was imprisonment for not less than 3 months, except where there were mitigating circumstances, in which case imprisonment could be for not less than 1 month. A fine could also be imposed. But I don't think the punishment was the problem. I think it was what the consequences were that was the problem. The other consequences. Franz von Papen had suggested that the conservatives in the cabinet would be able to control Hitler, as they had the majority, But this decree makes it clear that within the first few days, Hitler had outmaneuvered them by having his man, Wilhelm Frick, as the Minister of the Interior, and his man, Hermann Göring, as the head of the police in Prussia. This decree, however, had been planned earlier. It was nothing to do with the Nazis, in fact. Kurt von Schleicher, Hitler's predecessor in the office of Reich Chancellor, threatened the Communist Party in a radio speech on the 15th of December 1932 with the issuance of a tough decree. In this speech, he said, "I would like to warn the professional troublemakers, as well as a certain provocative press that poisons the atmosphere, that such a decree is ready in the drawer and is in fact an excellent piece of work in its completeness. I hope that the use of this decree will not be necessary. I also hope that it will not be necessary to deploy the army. But I also don't want to leave the anti-state communist movement in any doubt that the Reich government will not shy away from draconian exceptional provisions against the Communist Party if it should abuse the loosening of the reins to incite the population to hatred." So, the decree was in the drawer, and all Hitler had to do was to open the drawer and pull it out. Thus, in the run-up to the elections that were to be held 4 weeks later, the Nazis could stop the opposition parties holding meetings and collecting funds, and could ban any publication which they liked. And this, of course, could mean those publications reporting on what was happening in the country, or even just the policies of other parties. The Reichstag Fire Decree was to come 3 weeks later, but already within 1 week the Nazis had sufficiently undermined the Weimar Constitution to be able to bring about a dictatorship thanks to a few already wealthy landowners who were trying to cover up their misuse of government funds through the Eastern Aid Program. Thank you for listening. If you haven't already seen my video on the Eastern Aid Program, I would suggest that you have a look at it, and there is a link that follows. I've done various videos on the rise of the Nazis, as well as other aspects of the Third Reich. I upload every Tuesday and every Friday at 8 o'clock in the evening. That's 8 o'clock in the evening my time. I live in Poland and Germany. The video that you can see here in the background right now is of Neudeck, which was the ancestral home of Paul von Hindenburg, a present to him from the German people in the 1920s and part of the Eastern Aid scandal. You can see what it looks like today. I think it's quite fitting that Eastern Aid ended up in a pile of ruins, as did all of Germany, thanks to the appointment of Adolf Hitler by these conservatives.